Welcome back to another My Hero Academia Vigilantes Season 2 breakdown, this time going over Episode 8, titled A Sky with No Rain Left. Of course, we're going to be breaking down the episode, going over all the hidden Easter eggs and references, as well as the entire season, so be sure to Detroit, smash that like button, and subscribe to the Kidoki channel so that you won't miss any My Hero Academia Vigilantes breakdowns. Now, the episode begins with a bunch of heroes being sent out to deal with a giant villain named Garvey, whose quirk is called Stock, which allows him to absorb attacks, storing them up, turning the newly added attacks into lumps on his back, and then releasing them whenever he wants. And I will say, as a fan, one of the biggest drawbacks of Vigilantes is the overuse of giant villains. Like, come on now, how many giant villains do we have to go through here? Present Mike and Sensoji are doing their work studies together under the hero team Buster Union. For some fun facts, in Buster Union, Can Gunnin was inspired by Gundam's Gun Cannon. Melorine references Taro Yamamoto's Melorine Q Stick. Tech Magic looks to be inspired by the magical girl genre, and the other female pro hero on the team is actually named Boobs, which is actually wild. Also, I keep forgetting to mention this, but Sensoji's costume actually works very similar to Aoyama's costume in the way that his costume channels his blasts of energy created from his body into the lines of his suit so he can shoot out blasts from his hands and feet. Sensoji is rocking goggles this time, once again copying Present Mike. Mike calls out Sensoji's hypocrisy for all of the crap he gave Aizawa in the last episode, and Sensoji calls Aizawa weak. Present Mike says Aizawa sets himself back with his overthinking, but when he finds his guts, he is strong. The heroes finally make it to the villain and unleash all of their quirks at him, but Garvey eats all of their attacks, surprising them all as they weren't aware of the villain's quirk beforehand. Aizawa and Shirakumo help some nursery school kids and their teacher cross the street, and Shirakumo notes that Aizawa would be pretty good at working with kids if he were a teacher. Shirakumo being the first person to ever plant the seed of Aizawa becoming a teacher in the future. Aizawa doesn't think children would even like him, but the kids they helped actually end up loving Aizawa, proving Shirakumo's point. Shirakumo, just like Present Mike, knows Aizawa overthinks things to the point he talks himself out of doing things, which is what holds him back. But he also knows that Aizawa could do anything if he puts his mind to it. Midnight tells them to evacuate the area because of Garvey, and the heroes are shocked at the sheer destruction Garvey is able to cause, hinting at the possibility that Garvey could be enhanced. And thanks to My Hero Academia, we do know that All For One was actually the one behind this attack, an attack that was meant to play a part in his larger plan of obtaining bodies for the Nomu project, which ultimately results in Shirakumo being taken and eventually turning him into one of the first Nomu, that being Kurogiri, which I'll get more into the tragedy of Shirakumo's death in just a bit. Shirakumo and Aizawa try to get the kids to safety, but Garvey has already made it to their location. His Purple Highness tells the two to get to safety as he tries to fight the villain, but Garvey uses Present Mike's quirk to send the hero flying into the building Shirakumo and Aizawa are next to, damaging the building. Aizawa notices that Garvey had used Present Mike's quirk, and Garvey then uses Sensoji's quirk, destroying a part of the building, causing pieces of the building to fall towards Shirakumo and the kids. Shirakumo quickly uses his cloud to protect the kids and their teacher from the incoming rubble, but unfortunately, Shirakumo was hit in the head by the debris, knocking his goggles off of his head as he is buried under a pile of rubble, which ultimately results in his death, though Aizawa doesn't know that just yet. Now, the detail of Aizawa knowing that Present Mike's quirk was one of the quirks that helped cause the death of Shirakumo is very important, as Aizawa would never go on to tell Present Mike about this, keeping this detail a secret from him in order to not make Mike feel guilty, though Aizawa wouldn't be the only one to end up holding a huge secret, as Present Mike during the Paranormal Liberation War would learn that All For One actually was hoping to receive Aizawa's quirk after Garvey's attack. Present Mike would never go on to tell Aizawa this dark truth surrounding Shirakumo's death, as just like Aizawa, he didn't want his friend to feel guilty over being the one to survive this tragic event. Aizawa sees that he is the only one standing after the villain's attacks and begins to overthink the entire situation, but Shirakumo's gourd falls to the ground and Shirakumo, through the gourd's speaker, says that he's got this, giving Aizawa the motivation needed to take on the villain, with his plan being to erase whatever quirk the villain tries to use. He kicks one of the lumps away, but his erasure isn't enough, since even when he delays it from firing, the lump can still fire off and cause damage when his erasure is over. He changes his strategy up by luring the villain to fire at him while he is overhead in order to keep the attacks shooting towards the sky and not at the buildings and people below, and once they go off, he kicks the non-activated lump straight up into the sky so they detonate at a safe height. Aizawa gets slammed to the ground, and while hurt, he doesn't know how to handle the villain's size. Shirakumo once again tells Aizawa that he is the only one that can protect them all, as he knows that he won't lose. Encouraged once more, Aizawa gets up and in an amazing scene uses his scarf to beat up the villain, all while Shirakumo cheers him on. In a desperate attempt to win, the villain activates all of his lumps, but Aizawa uses his eraser to delay the activation and uses his scarf to collect them all and shove them all down the villain's throat. He deactivates his eraser and the quirks all detonate within Garvey, Aizawa defeating the villain with his quirk and strength alone. An important detail I noticed is that given the villain's destructive capabilities, All Might doesn't show up at all to save the day, which does make me believe that at this point in the timeline, All Might was most likely going around taking down All for One's operations and allies around the world, since it was made pretty clear at the beginning of this arc that All Might is a well-known top hero by Aizawa. In the aftermath, everyone is having their wounds tended to. Aizawa asks Midnight about Shirakumo's wounds, but Midnight doesn't say a word as she can be seen crying. He thinks the wounds are just really bad, and he tells Mike to grab Shirakumo's speaker. It's revealed the speaker was busted the entire time, and Sensoji says Aizawa couldn't have possibly heard Shirakumo and was just imagining Shirakumo cheering him on the whole time. Aizawa knows he heard Shirakumo, but he then turns to see Shirakumo's body covered in a blood-stained sheet, revealing that Shirakumo had been dead this entire time. Now, if we know anything about My Hero Academia, there is actually a pretty good possibility that Shirakumo had reached out to Aizawa in the afterlife, similar to how Nana Shimura and Night Eye reached out to All Might after his final battle against All for One. And before anyone says that this is just in his head, these sorts of interactions with the afterlife or a person's quirk or a dead character has happened a good amount of times in My Hero Academia, and it's pretty much confirmed in the final arc of Vigilantes that these interactions are not just in the characters' heads and are real interactions. Sensoji doubles down trying to make Aizawa feel proud over taking down the villain alone, but Aizawa and the rest of them are too heartbroken over the loss of Shirakumo. It rains even harder, with Mike and Aizawa staying behind to grieve as Aizawa cries holding Shirakumo's goggles and remembering all of the good times they had together. A year goes by, with Aizawa now in his third year at UA. We see that Aizawa had really taken the loss of Shirakumo hard. He doesn't interact much with class activities anymore, and that anime here doesn't adapt, bringing out his sleeping bag to avoid the group, as well as Aizawa changing his goggles to no longer contain glass, since close quarters combat could potentially lead to the glass breaking and damaging his eyes, learning from his fight with Garvey. He became complacent with his studies, not striving to achieve greater heights as a hero, and is constantly using the school's gym to train solo, with present Mike showing up to his training sessions knowing that Aizawa hasn't been taking the loss of Shirakumo well, becoming a real loner. Aizawa tells his teacher that he will be going the battler route, just like Shirakumo had once suggested, and will be an independent underground hero because that's what he's meant to be. On graduation day, he begins his lonely journey, not even wanting to take a group photo with the class. We flash forward throughout his his solo career as a hero, taking on villains and tending to his wounds and training. Miss Joke even makes a cameo appearance here as we see how sad and lonely Aizawa's life was as a bounty hunter type of hero. In the present, the rain stops as Aizawa and Koichi head to the Hopper's shop, where it's revealed that the Hoppers have taken in Octoid and are going to be opening a shop. They see the cat Koichi had found, and loving the cat, they decide to turn their new shop into a cat cafe that's inclusive towards those with heteromorphic type quirks. Aizawa sees them all having a great time discussing their dream cafe and remembers the day Shirakumo suggested that they start their own dream agency together, and were discussing what they all wanted in their agency. Aizawa, being a cat lover, wanting a cat tower for Sushi so that he could be the agency's resident cat. Midnight, hating the thought of giving up Sushi, hesitantly agrees that it would be a great idea. In his thoughts, remembering the past fondly, he notes that their plans for the future weren't made alone, but together. They were ready for anything and to save everyone, starting with a single cat. And we see, for the first time, Aizawa genuinely smile and laughing alongside his friends. He's snapped out of the past once more as the group include Aizawa in their plans for the cat cafe, saving him a special spot in the cafe just for him. Koichi is excited that the cat had found a new home. Aizawa, though, sees the sky had cleared up, finally knows what he wants to do and what his new path in life is going to be, letting us know that he will be taking on the job of being a teacher at UA alongside Midnight and Present Mike, being together with his friends again. He tells them not to include him in their plans since he will be leaving town soon, but he thinks the cat cafe is a great idea and plans to visit the cat when he can, as he walks away smiling at the group. He receives a message from Midnight and we see more pictures of Sushi, further deepening their bond with each other, making it all the more heartbreaking that he would one day be praying at Midnight's own grave in the future. The episode ending on a happy note as Aizawa is going to be heading down this new path in life as a teacher. Now, this episode adapted 3 chapters, them being chapters 63, 64, and 65. This was an amazing episode, finishing the Aizawa School Days arc, adding so much more depth to not just Aizawa's character, but Midnight's and Present Mike's as well, giving us so much more insight into why Aizawa is the way he is at the beginning of My Hero Academia, and why he was so strict with Deku and his other classes, making sure his students know that a hero's life can be over in an instant if they're in way over their heads, using what happened to Shirakumo as a lesson for his students. Let me know your thoughts on the 8th episode of My Hero Academia Vigilantes Season 2. The Sky Egg arc will begin in the next episode and I'm so excited for it. But let me know everything in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to smash that like button, and if you are new to the Kiroki channel, then be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on so that you don't miss any My Hero Academia Vigilantes Season 2 breakdowns. With that said, I'll see you all in the next one.